All right, Dan, here we are. We're the Varsity Voices, and we just got through the semifinals, and it was really a good weekend of games, some really exciting games. You and I got a chance to get out to a couple of them, and we'll talk about that. But um, um, a lot of Chicago Catholic League teams within in the semifinals and heading on to the finals. So good week for the Chicago Catholic League.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, it was just about everything you could ask for. Everything went their way, and they earned it. They all earned these spots down there. They're all deserving teams. So it was a great weekend. There were some games that were great. There were some games that were blowouts. But it was they were all interesting in some way, shape, or form.
They were.
Some strange stuff happened, and so I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on some of it.
Yeah, and I'll be interested to hear yours too, Dan. And I think we talked about this in our prognosticus episode last week leading up to the semifinals, but we were wondering if there were going to be any blowouts, right, when you get to this point.
Yeah.
And I think we mentioned one that we thought maybe that it might be that, and it did turn out to be that. But there was another one that I was not expecting, right? And we'll talk about that as we go through this. All right.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's talk first. We'll start with the Montini Wilmington game, which is one that that I went out to, and I've got to play that, Dan, because before I actually get into the game itself, I love what Montini does as far as, their build up to the game and then game day for them. And they go all out. And I think I texted you when I was there on Saturday, and I said, you know what? Montini is next level, and they are next level in a good way. Right.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the things
that
they do, a flyover, right? They've got the Bronco out there on the field. The crowd that they get at their games, just surrounding the field, and the atmosphere that's there. It's just outstanding. It's the way high school football should be, I think.
You're right. When you say next level, it is next level. They keep adding things. I love it. Starts with a cannon. Then we're going to go with a horse. Then we're going to do the horse and a flyover. And they've always got the fireworks, the colored fireworks, the smoke is everywhere.
Yeah.
And then arancini. I mean, so
the arancini, that just tops it off for sure. Yes.
For me, it's like reason to go back.
Well, I had some arancini, Dan.
Did you?
I had some arancini. I did, and it was outstanding.
Outstanding.
Thanks to Dave Arian, who hooked me up with some arancini, and I loved it. And I actually brought one home for my wife, and she loved it as well. So, even the attention to details, like having some arancini. Over and above, the hot dogs and the hamburgers and the popcorn and the nachos. It's just, they seem to do everything right. And like I said, next level, but in the perfect way, and I hope the other schools around and in the Chicago Catholic League are taking notice and kind of step up their games as well to, let's say, compete with Montini in this.
Yeah. That's, if we can start a competition for the best right. Game day experience, right? That'd be kind of cool.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, and not only that, Dan, but the team Montini as well just plays outstanding football, and they showed it again in this game against an undefeated Wilmington team. They go out and they win 42-12. Over Wilmington, who was the defending Class 2A state champions, and they stepped up to class this year. But like I said, Wilmington was undefeated this year, and I think they beat most teams by an average of 35 to 40 points over the course of the year. And Dan, in our prognosticus episode, we talked about what we thought Montini needed to do against Wilmington. And you know what? One of the things we mentioned was we thought their offense needed to step up a bit. And guess what they did? Their offense stepped up.
Stepped up in a big way. In a
big way.
Yeah.
Big way. Yep. Israel Abrams had an outstanding game. He threw 4 touchdowns. Let's see, 2 to Santino Florio, 2 to CJ Harkins. And the one thing that I was impressed by being out at this game and watching Israel play was the command he had in this game, Dan, and he looked completely confident. And it showed in what he did on the field and obviously in the final score here.
Yeah, and you got to find a way to get your great players the football. Now he's one, so he's got the football every snap, right? So it starts with him. But to be able to distribute the ball to Florio, to Harkins, and I know they gave it to Santino on a couple end arounds, and jet sweeps. So that's what I felt like they needed to do. We said that their offense had to maybe have to score in the 20s this week, and that would have gotten it done. But it was a great victory, great springboard into the state finals. So I know they're really excited. They, like you mentioned, they have a community there that is all in, and so they are a lot of fun to watch, and I'm happy for them. And I think that they have definitely earned it. Their defense, on the field, their defense is outstanding. They've got, you mentioned Dave Arion and his sons. I think Nick had a pick 6. And
Nick had a pick 6. I think Vince had a pick 6, and Nick blocked an extra point.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I had it backward then. Yeah, so yeah, they can really play on that second level. They got the big JC Hayes and the big guys up front, and Isaac Alexander, the dog in the back, and so they're a really, really balanced team with great players at every level. They're going to be a handful in the state title game.
They are, and we talk about their offense, obviously, and we talked about it needing to step up, and it did in a big way in this game. But again, I felt like it came down to defense, right? And them being able to hold a team that's been averaging 40 points a game to only 12 points. I think what was the stat I saw that I don't think any team has scored more than 18 points against Montini, over the course of the year, Dan. Maybe that's just the playoffs, but I'll have to look that up for sure. But some of the and we've talked about their defense. We've talked about their defensive line, and I think their defensive line just showed up huge, and their linebackers in this game.
The front 7 were outstanding.
Front 7, outstanding. Castaldo, Hayes, their linebackers, Jackson Lane, as well as the others, they really stepped up in this game, and they held a team which was on a 25-game win streak in Wilmington, and who was 12-0. I mean, they held them, to only 12 points. So, you can't say enough about their defense too. So I think they are primed going into next week in the state championship game against who are they playing, Dan? I want you to say Monticello. So we got Montini and Monticello, and we'll talk about that in a episode coming up later in the week. But great win. I
know how many kilometers they are apart in Italy, by the way. So
I'm
going to save it. I do. I've already looked it up. I had the map out. Good. The map out of the old country, and so I looked it up. Looked it up there and here, so we can do a comparison.
I can't wait to do that, Dan.
Right?
That sounds so exciting.
Podcast.
Yeah, on all of our listeners listening right now, I'm sure they're on the edge of their seats and can't wait for that, Dan.
Yeah, it's quite.
They're going to have to wait. Okay, it is. So let's go to the game that you were at, Dan, and it's DePaul Prep and Coal City.
Yeah,
How was that? First of all, tell me about the atmosphere there.
really good atmosphere. It's a new field. It's a few years old. They've got beautiful facilities. They've got their football field's beautiful. They've got a great right behind it is a softball field, all turf. Behind that's a baseball field. I think that's turfed as well. I got to see my chief of police, Chris Harsheim, over there. So
Oh,
so
you
we
did
chatted.
good.
Yeah, yeah. And
Did you get the escort?
I didn't get the escort. No, he's working. He's on the job there. So
Oh, really?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, they have a great community. They're way into it. It's a great fan base, and so they what they have, Joe, that's kind of cool. They've got a video board, so they introduce like
Oh,
their
that is
defense,
sweet.
and they've got all the players like doing a dance or whatever, and as they introduce them on the video board,
Ah,
which is
that's
pretty
fun.
cool.
I
Yeah.
like it. Yeah.
Yeah. But sat on the DePaul side, got to meet James Ochoa. His son is, I just want to make Jordan Ochoa, so junior linebacker. So it was great. They're really into it. All the fans super excited. And it was a good game. It was a defensive battle in the first half. DePaul scored with like 4 seconds on the clock in the first half to end the first half to go up 7-0. And Joe, I felt like in the second half both defenses started to get tired, wear down a little bit. Landon Benson's a load. He does everything.
Yeah.
He punts for him. Yeah, he's their, I don't know. Obviously their primary ball carrier, but will catch balls out of the backfield. I think he sold me hot dogs at halftime. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
he is, and they've got a really nice team. They play great defense. DePaul had a couple bad turnovers in the first half that really stalled drive. One, I think, was going in the end zone. They turned it over on a fumble, but and then Coal City came out and tied it up. DePaul answered in like 4 plays, and Coal City came back and tied it up again. And DePaul was able to answer and then just kind of hold them off defensively for the rest of the game. So it's a great victory. It was really exciting. The fans were really into it. The cast of characters who for DePaul that you're used to. Juju Rodriguez had a great game. Nick Martinez had a great game. Avery Bellis was outstanding defensively.
Yeah.
They also got a lot of good contributions from Shea Griffith. I think is he number 9? Aiden Cassette was outstanding too at 5
Defensive
techniques.
end. Yeah.
Defensive end and Michael Casper as well. So it's funny. You can see some of these teams are a little banged up. They're playing some more people. They're getting some people in there. But they've got their stars in there, making big plays when they have to, and DePaul got that. So Matt Osterman was outstanding again. So they're really excited for the next step, and it's the first time that they've gone down as DePaul Prep, and so they're thrilled.
Yeah, I'm sure they are, Dan. When you think about or talk about what DePaul Prep has done over the course of the season, and we interviewed Coach Passarella earlier in the preseason, actually, and you and I both came away from that interview thinking that this is a team that is going to take the next step this year. I don't know if you or I thought that this would be where they would be at by the end of the year, playing in the state championship. But based on what they've done over the course of the regular season and their stars showing up each and every game, it's really been an outstanding year for them. And I think it's going to culminate here in state championship game where they're going to they're going to take on Mount Zion who beat Normal University 21-14. So it's
Yeah,
going to be a good game.
it's going to
Yeah.
be a really good game. Yeah, Mount Zion's got some players. I think they've got a couple guys being heavily recruited. Maybe U of I, maybe a guy or two, one a senior, one a junior. But so they've got a lot of talent at Mount Zion. They like to throw the ball all over the place. I think I've got a contact down there. It tells me a little bit about what's going on.
Another
but yeah,
police chief? You going to get a escort to this one, maybe?
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
You may have to stay home for these, and
I was going to say, yeah,
we're going to watch them together, Dan.
This is gonna be from the comfort of my own home. So
right, that's the way it should be. All right. So DePaul Prep, great win, on to the state championship. 21-14 win over Coal City. They'll take on Mount Zion. Okay. Let's go to the St. Francis Nazareth game. And we were out at St. Francis this past week, Dan, and we were giving Will Alt his Zuko's Dog of the Week award for, I think it was week 8.
Week 8, yes.
Week 8. And we knew they were ready to play this game. It was a rematch against Nazareth, where St. Francis, they won during the regular season. I think it was 39-36. It was big game. Brady Palmer had a huge game. So we could tell they were ready, but Nazareth comes away with a 40-21 win over St. Francis in this game. And you and I think we predicted this, and we don't do that lightly, Dan, especially when it's two Chicago Catholic League teams. But we just saw that we felt that Nazareth was going to have a little too much on offense and on defense, and we're going to put St. Francis in some tough spots as far as this game was concerned. And that's really, it kind of came down to that in this game.
Yeah, I think what we said in the Prognosticus episode was we talked about Nazareth's experience, and I think it showed. I really do. I felt like, especially in the first quarter, I felt St. Francis came out. They were I can't think of another word other than sloppy in the first quarter, and I think their coach said that he wasn't thrilled with how they played. But Naz forces you to do some of those things. Right. They are so explosive, and what I just continue to see about Nazareth, and it feels like it's been this way for 15 years, but nothing seems to bother them. Coach Racky does a great job of getting those guys to handle adversity, and they made some mistakes too. They have some penalties, turnovers. Nothing seems to bother them. Whereas, if St. Francis were to make a mistake, it felt like Naz just capitalized on it. And every time St. Francis tried to get close, they opened the second half with a kickoff return for a touchdown, right? St. Francis, Zach Washington. He is damn good. And then what happens? Eddie McLean Jr. takes the following kickoff to the house.
Right. Exactly.
So St. Francis thinks, we're closing it in, we're getting there, and it just every time Naz just responded. It's just what they do. They've got so many weapons offensively that they are really, really difficult to stop. I think I counted 4 or 5 guys playing tailback for them, all very effective, all could play in the Catholic League somewhere. So they have a really, really good explosive team that makes a ton of big plays and are going to be really difficult to stop.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned it, Dan, regarding their experience, especially their experience in the playoffs. And I read that Logan Malachek and Gabe Kaminsky are 2 of 6 Nazareth seniors who started as sophomores in the 2022 Class 5A final. And actually, Malachek and Kaminsky, they started as freshmen for the Class 5A quarterfinal team. And they've won 14 consecutive playoff games. That experience at this time of the year makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it's a huge deal, and none of this is new. When you've got that feeling and what to expect and how teams are going to be and what the atmosphere is going to be like and everything leading up to it and they just look like it. They look like they are comfortable, and that it's not just another game, but they kind of treat it like, hey, this is just it's a regular football game, and so that's how they look. They don't look any different than they do during the season. They don't seem to, like I said, they don't seem to get flustered one bit. So that experience is huge.
Yes, it is. All right, and further efforts, they get to take on Joliet Catholic next week in the state final, right?
Yeah. Oof,
yeah,
man.
So, and that brings us to the Joliet Catholic game, Dan, and I've got something for you here, okay?
What's that?
You ready?
Yeah.
Yes. Right. Smash,
Yeah.
and we've been talking about Joliet Catholic, and you mentioned how they just remind you of the Hulk when he talks about Smash. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what they did again in this game against Morris. Now, you and I, we kind of predicted this, Dan. We thought this might be a game that was a bit of a blowout, and sure enough, it turned out that way. Joliet Catholic beating Morris 42-7 on Saturday, and they really did whatever they wanted, Dan, in their bread and butter, which is their running game on offense with Stringham, with McGreeny, and with Bremner. And they finished with more than 350 yards on the ground.
Christmas.
And just nobody, Morris had no answer for their guys up front as well as the guys carrying the ball. So
Yeah, well, it's a physics problem, right? That's
Yep.
what I said in the prognosticus episode. They had a physics problem, and it showed. And now, to be fair, everyone is going to have a physics problem with that offensive line and those backs, except maybe Gabe Kaminsky, right? And
maybe,
and some
but
of
he's going to need some help. I
he's
think,
going to
right?
need some help. Yep, yep.
Yes.
And so I am, I know we're not predicting here, so I'm grateful for that because I don't have an answer. But wow, both these teams seem like they're on a roll. I mean, you're going to want to stop what you're doing and watch the 5A game next weekend.
Yeah, for sure. And both these teams, I think, well, Joliet Catholic in this game, I feel like they've been peaking. They had a great year, obviously, during the regular season, but they've just been completely dominant in the playoffs, and they seem to be peaking as far as their offensive line, their running backs, their quarterback. Is throwing the ball when he needs to, right, and finding people for big gains. Their defense, again, with their defensive backs. I think Mikey Brow intercepted a pass in this game. It's either him or Beitler. You've got their linebackers, Daniel Rouse, who I think recovered a fumble in this game.
Yeah, I feel like he does every week.
Every week, he's around the ball constantly, makes a ton of tackles, and they were completely dominant again this week. So that is going to be an outstanding game.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. There's a revenge factor there. There's Naz has had their number a little bit. So it's going to be two teams that are really fired up, and it'll be the first game Saturday morning. So it'll be a great way to watch. You're gonna be careful with your coffee. You might spill it. Some of the hits
right.
out there that we see right away, I'm sure.
Yes, for sure. And we'll be watching, Dan. So our listeners can at some point, well, I don't know if we're going to watch live and give our listeners a chance to listen to us, but if not that, at least we'll be recapping the game for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's go to the 7A game. And this was Mount Carmel in St. Rita. And this is probably the most surprising game to me, Dan, out of all of them, just because of the way Mount Carmel completely dominated St. Rita in this game. I mean, we know how good St. Rita's defense is. but Mount Carmel beat them 43-24, and that score kind of belies what the actual domination was, because I think there were Mount Carmel scored 5 touchdowns in the first half, Dan, and
Unreal.
unreal.
Their passing game is just prolific.
It is. And it's a lot of the same guys that we've talked about over the course of the season. Obviously, Jack Elliott, their quarterback. And we mentioned in our prognosticus episode how many other weapons they have on offense, with Quentin Burrell, who scored a touchdown, their wide receiver. Also, they got Xander Gorman, their tight end, involved. They also got Marshawn Thornton involved with a touchdown pass. And then you've got Cooper Lehman, right?
Yeah.
Your other wide receiver. He had another touchdown. So Jack Elliott was able to kind of spread the ball around, and it was almost like a clinic when I watched some of the highlights here that Mount Carmel put on against St. Rita, who we know is a really good team, Dan. But Mount Carmel, they came ready. They came ready to play. It was at St. Rita, and it showed in the score.
Yeah, and they God, was it running clock in the first half? I think it may have been 43-0 at one point.
Yes,
with under 2 minutes to go in the first half. It's just unbelievable to me. And I hadn't had a chance to watch too much of the game, just some highlights. But yeah, I was just surprised that St. Rita wasn't able to be more effective offensively. And watching how Normal went up and down the field, I thought, if I'm St. Rita, I'm going to run those plays.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but it takes some people to do it, and you'd think St. Rita does, but Mount Carmel it's one of those things right now. They just have their number. Just have their number, and they know them so well. These teams know each other, so well, and it is something that I think there's kind of a hump that St. Rita has to get over, and it's probably between their ears, and
right.
Rather than on the field, because it just seems like Mount Carmel knows exactly what to do to get St. Rita down and keep them down.
Yeah, and if you're going to compete with Mount Carmel going forward, because for St. Rita, they're in your class, right? So you've got to figure out a way to beat the top dog, and what you need to do in order to do that. And I feel like they had some really good weapons this year in Nick Herman, who had a pretty good game here. I think he rushed for over 80 yards. They've also got a sophomore running back in Brandon Johnson. Obviously we've talked about Walter Jones, one of the wide receivers, but I just feel like if you were to match up weapon against weapon on offense and defense, that Mount Carmel just has, one or two or even three more. So, for Rita, they've got to find a way to, to really compete with a team like Mount Carmel, because if you want a state championship, Mount Carmel is who you're going to have to go through.
Yeah, you are. And, both them and Joliet Catholic will be going for their state record 16th, maybe
16th. Yes. 16th,
yeah.
16th. Right.
Good gravy. Yeah. Wow. That's a lot of state titles.
Yeah. Yeah, that is. And, they both, when you look at the history of both of the programs, obviously, when you say 16, you're like, oh my God. But then when you look at the history of the programs, you're like, well, I guess I can see that.
The tradition is there.
Yep, the tradition is there. The talent is there. Yeah, the teams have been there. So
yeah, success breeds success.
Yes. And let's see. So Mount Carmel, they will take on Batavia in the state championship game.
Good rivalry game there.
Good rivalry game, yeah. Yep. And we'll talk about that, too, later in the week, right?
All right, yep.
All right, so our last game, Dan, is Loyola in Lincoln Way East. And, I'll start this off by saying you and I both got this one wrong, Dan.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. We both picked Lincoln Way East, and I mean, there are good reasons why we did that, right?
Oh,
I mean, just look at what they've done to all of their competition over the course of the regular season and then into the playoffs. Um, we didn't watch them nearly as closely over the course of the year as we did Loyola, and we saw some of Loyola's ups and downs and that. They had some injuries which affected them in a couple of games. And I just didn't, I didn't think that Loyola was going to have enough to take care of Lincoln Way East. But you know what? Loyola seems to have a way to come up with the game plan, and then the players execute it on offense and on defense to do enough to come away with a win against a really good Lincoln Way East team.
yeah. And when I think about Loyola, I feel like they do everything right. They play sound. They don't try and overcomplicate things. It is Fitz, it's McPherson, you know, and they did a great job, distributing the football. I'm gonna butcher this name, Joe. What's the wide receiver for Loyola?
Gavin
Uh,
Brandenburg.
Vandenberg, yes, yeah, boy,
Brandenburg, yeah.
when they need 8 yards or whatever it might be, they throw the ball to him, and he is like money in the bank. Really, really nice receiver that we haven't talked too much about this year, but
No,
I
we
came away
haven't.
really impressed. He was, and in the second half, the key to this game to me was that Loyola scored late in the second quarter and then got the ball back to start the third quarter and scored again to take the. I think that's when they took the lead, but I felt like that gave them the momentum, and that's coaching too. I mean, to get
It
that
is.
really
Yep.
work, to get that last score and get that double possession where then you take the lead. They just did a great job. Once they had the lead, then it was McPherson and Fitz, McPherson and Fitz, McPherson and Fitz. They just kind of tag team their way down the field and kept the football. Were able to have massive time of possession, and Lincoln Way East at one point scored in three or four plays, to get close, and then Loyola just kept the football. It was that was another clinic like game, the way they play.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily an exciting game, Dan, I guess is how I would put it. But, when you look at from a perspective of, what you need to do to win a game against a really good opponent, I think Loyola, you mentioned it, the coaching and their game plan was just outstanding. I mean, McPherson getting his 3 to 4 yards, 5 yards a pop, right? And then Fitzgerald, carrying it. He doesn't look like he's gaining all that many yards, but the next thing you know is he's taken down, but he's gained 4 or 5 yards, right? And they just went back and forth between the two of them, march the ball down the field and put enough points on the board to beat a really good Lincoln Way East team.
Yeah, it's something because Lincoln Way East plays great defense too, and we've
Yeah.
said looking back at their scores, they've dominated everyone, and so it is just it's just really impressive. I think Fitz had 300 yards. Fitzgerald had 300 total yards, 222 passing,
Right.
and carried for I think another 70 yards, and yeah, they just were outstanding, and you have to be because Jonas Williams for Lincoln Way East, whoa,
He's a player. He
whoa,
is. And he's only a junior, Dan.
whoa,
Yeah.
yeah,
They got to
that's
deal with him next year as
whoa.
well.
That's all I
Yeah.
could say about him is whoa.
Yes.
Yeah, he is unbelievable,
Yeah.
unbelievable.
I saw one of the quotes from the head coach for Lincoln Way East, Rob Zavonar.
Zvonar, yeah,
Yeah. And he said, so they've lost 5 times in a row now to Loyola. And he said, they've got our number. He said, we're not going to sit here and pretend that they don't.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing for a head coach to say.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna cry many tears, over over that and their program because, like we said, Jonas Williams is coming back next year, and they get a chance to go for it again. But he's right. Loyola somehow has their number,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, Lincoln Way East has not been able to get over that hump.
No, same thing, right? The same thing that we said about Mount Carmel and St. Rita.
Yeah,
There's just those teams that you just have a difficult time for whatever reason. And I kind of felt like this was the year for Lincoln Way East, but Joe, the other thing is that Lincoln Way East, and I think Fitzgerald said it in the paper, but that they knew they hadn't been in a four quarter game, and so that type of challenge in the regular season and within your conference, it really prepares you for the playoffs.
and we've been talking about that for the
Yeah.
last couple of weeks, right, Dan? That
at least
one of the criteria that you and I have kind of been relying on, and so, especially in the playoff games, is, how tough of a schedule or how tough of a route have they had throughout their regular season schedule? Are they battle tested? All of those kinds of things. And we know the Chicago Catholic League is. And when we saw a team like Lincoln Way East and some of the other ones like Wilmington and I don't know, Rochelle, I can't, there were some others that maybe we talked about in the same way. They just did not have that same kind of, or didn't face that same kind of adversity, or that same kind of, toughness where they had to get through some really tough games during their conference schedule and during the regular season.
Yeah, well, it showed, right? The Catholic League, that's they showed out. I mean, I only think the one that lost was the one playing another Catholic League team, right? So
yeah.
the rest all advanced. So we've got what six teams,
so
in the finals.
The Catholic League had they had teams in the playoffs in 5 classes, right? So when it gets down to the state finals, you're talking about 10 teams in 5 classes. How many are from the Chicago Catholic League? 6.
Yeah.
So 60% of the teams out of those 5 classes in the state final are Chicago Catholic League teams. What does that tell you?
Well, what did we say about phone calls to the IHSA after?
Right.
Again, I haven't seen that. Everyone has been very gracious, at least publicly. But it's got to be frustrating for some of these teams. But it's. I think it has as much to do with the players, but even more so the way that they are prepared throughout the season based on the competition they play week in and week out.
Right. And I think, in the preseason, we talked about how some of these teams, whether it was a public league or whether it was other teams, maybe trying to schedule some of those non-conference games, those first 2 games, a little tougher competition. We talked about some of the teams stepping up and scheduling the Chicago Catholic League. Maybe we'll see more of that, Dan, going forward. Just to try and get a taste of what it's like to play a team like, like some of the teams within the Chicago Catholic League.
Yeah, and it's easy for me to say from my desk here in my office that yes, I would schedule 2 of them. Let's go. Let's get this out there and schedule a couple Catholic League, but much easier said than done, right?
It is
when you're thinking about that 5-win threshold, and if you go 0-2, it's like, oh boy, now we're up against it, backs against the wall. Right,
backs against the wall. Yeah, which we talked about all year.
Yeah, so it's but the backs. How many times have we said that about these Catholic League teams? I think we said it about Loyola after 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Their backs are against the wall a little bit, and so they have to respond. And so it's been there and done that for a lot of these schools.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Dan. Well, that's a good recap of the semifinals, and we are now looking forward to the the state championship games, and we'll have an episode later this week. Our last prognosticus episode, Dan, for
Yeah,
this year
for this year. Yep.
will be this week, and I'm not sure what it's going to be like as far as my prognosticus is concerned. Whether he's going to be ornery as usual, or maybe he'll be looking forward to, hey, this is the last game, and
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to next year.
Yeah, well, he's probably halfway packed for Marco Island.
He probably is, right. Yeah, he's going to stick around though, especially for the Montini Monticello game. That's
right.
one of his favorites.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's gonna be tied in knots all week.
He is. He is. So I'll be interested to hear. I usually don't hear from him until around Thursday morning sometime, but when I do, we'll be talking about it in that episode, and I'll let you know what he has to say. And
oh yeah,
I'll ask him to join us again, Dan.
okay,
He
all right.
keeps saying no, no, no. He's such a pain in the ass sometimes, but maybe this time for the last game, the state championship, he'll join us. We'll see.
Get him on.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Make sure wherever you're listening at that you subscribe, you follow, you like us, you comment. We'd love to get your comments as well. But most of all, we appreciate you listening, and we will talk to you soon.